Forget everything you know about the McCann case. The crime didn't happen in Portugal. It happened in London, in a room where politicians decided that a couple's silence was worth £13 million. This number isn't speculation. It's the documented amount the British taxpayer paid for Operation Grange, the Scotland Yard investigation into Madeleine's disappearance. This fact reveals a deeply uncomfortable truth. The McCann case was never about finding a missing child. It was about controlling a narrative at any cost, and the price of that control was the truth itself. The story we were told is a moving family drama. Praia da Luz, 2007. A sun-drenched resort, a group of British doctors enjoying a well-deserved holiday. The devoted parents, Kate and Jerry McCann, are dining with friends while their 3-year-old daughter, the angel child, sleeps peacefully in a nearby apartment. Then, the unthinkable happens. Around 10 o'clock at night, the mother discovers her daughter's bed is empty, the bedroom window open. A mother's scream tears through the night, launching one of the largest manhunts in modern history. The world's press descends on the small village. Celebrities, politicians, and even the Pope offer their support. The narrative is clear: an innocent family, a random tragedy, a desperate search for a kidnapped child. That story traveled the entire world. And speaking of which, a curiosity just occurred to me. What city are you watching me from right now? Comment down below. It's always incredible to see how our community of curious minds is spread across every continent, all connected by the same search for answers. Now let's get back to the story they told us. But what if this story is the biggest and most expensive public relations operation ever assembled? What if the unprecedented intervention of the British government wasn't an act of compassion, but an act of damage control? The hidden truth, which we will begin to unravel today, is that the level of state involvement in the McCann case is so disproportionate that it suggests a tacit agreement, a pact of silence in exchange for protection and unlimited resources. And exposing this is the first step of our mission. We are building the black box, the complete confidential file of this investigation. Every video we release is another document we leak into this archive, making public what they tried to hide. We are not going to ask for the truth, we are going to leak the truth until it becomes the only possible story. Operation Black Box begins now. So, what was the real purpose of Operation Grange? And what forgotten lesson does it teach us about the difference between seeking justice and controlling information? To understand the contract, we first need to dismantle the story it was designed to protect. The official kidnapping narrative, when examined under the cold light of logic, doesn't just crack, it disintegrates. The centerpiece of the kidnapping is the bedroom window. Kate McCann claimed she found it open, with the shutter raised, the kidnapper's supposed escape route. But the physical evidence documented by the Portuguese police tells a different story. Tests showed that the external shutter was extremely difficult and noisy to open from the outside. To do so without waking 3 small children just a few feet away would require supernatural skill. More importantly, there was not a single sign of forced entry, not on the shutter, not on the window latch. The dust on the windowsill was undisturbed. No clothing fibers, no tool marks. The forensic logic is clear. The window could only have been opened from the inside. They said it was an escape route. The evidence shows it was a piece of theater. They said the apartment's front door was left unlocked to make the checks on the children easier. But logic, once again, destroys this claim. If a silent professional kidnapper enters through the unlocked door, the easiest route, why would they risk everything to exit through the window, a complex and noisy route? And if they entered through the window, why would they care about the door? The crime scene doesn't have the signature of a professional. It has the signature of confusion, of a story hastily assembled with pieces that don't fit. The final proof is the absence of an intruder's DNA. In a small room, a grown man carrying a child who might be struggling would inevitably leave a trace. A strand of hair, a skin cell, but there was nothing. The room was forensically clean of any stranger. The crime scene doesn't point to a kidnapping, it points to a staging. With the crime scene crumbling, the focus shifts to the actors, the Tupper's 7, the group of friends dining with the McCanns. Their statements should have been the foundation of the investigation, but they became a swamp of contradictions and convenient memories. Each statement seemed less like a recollection and more like a performance. Let's start with what we can call the dinner contradiction. The group claims they took turns checking on the children, but when the police asked for details, the story fell apart. No one could agree on the times. Who went? At what time? The answers varied from statement to statement, creating a timeline that was hazy and impossible to verify. The group's collective memory seemed to have selective amnesia for the very details that mattered most. Then we have the phantom sighting. One of the friends, Jane Tanner, gave the police what seemed to be the definitive proof of the abduction. She said she saw a man carrying a child in pajamas around 9:15 p.m., walking away from the apartment. The image was powerful and fueled the abduction theory for months. The problem? The story didn't hold up. Jane's description changed several times, and later the investigation concluded that the man she saw was just another tourist, an innocent British father carrying his own sleeping daughter. The main eyewitness to the abduction, in fact, saw nothing related to the crime. The cornerstone of the official narrative was an illusion. And then we come to the statement of David Payne, a close friend of Jerry's. His testimony should have been the strongest alibi for Jerry, but it became the deepest crack in the story. Payne claimed to have seen Jerry around 9:30 p.m. chatting with another tourist, but his memory was strangely selective. He vividly remembered this encounter, but was vague about almost every other detail of the night. Even more disturbing was what he allegedly said about the afternoon of the disappearance, admitting in later interrogations that Madeleine had seemed sleepy and lethargic, and that he even questioned Jerry about it. If this is true, it means Payne lied in his initial statement, hiding a crucial fact, that something was wrong with Madeleine hours before she disappeared. He wasn't just reporting facts, he was building a narrative of normality. Their story simply doesn't add up. What do you think is the most glaring inconsistency so far? The testimony about the window or the confusing dinner timeline? Leave your analysis in the comments. Every theory from you is an intelligence report we add to our archive. Together, we are mapping the weaknesses of the official narrative. When the words of witnesses become useless, an investigation needs a silent hero, a witness who cannot be intimidated, who has no loyalty to anyone, and who does not lie. Science. And science arrived in Praia da Luz in the form of two British sniffer dogs, Eddie and Keela. And what they found didn't just contradict the official narrative, it blew it up. Eddie was a cadaver dog, trained to detect the specific subtle odor that a decomposing human body leaves behind. Keela was a blood dog, an expert in finding traces of blood. Weeks after the disappearance, they were brought to apartment 5A. The result was chilling. Inside the apartment, Eddie, the cadaver dog, gave a strong, clear alert behind the living room sofa and inside a closet in the parents' bedroom. This doesn't mean there was a body there at that moment. It means the scent of death had permeated those locations. Keela, the blood dog, also alerted behind the sofa. Science was saying that death and blood had been present in that apartment, but the most damning discovery came later. The dogs were taken to inspect the car the McCanns had rented 25 days after Madeleine's disappearance. In the trunk of that car, a Renault Scenic, both dogs had the strongest reactions of the entire investigation. Eddie alerted to the odor of a cadaver. Keela alerted to blood. The logic is relentless. A kidnapper would not return weeks later to place his victim's body in the family's rental car. The only explanation that connects these dots is that Madeleine's body was in that apartment and later was transported in that car. The samples collected from the spots where the dogs alerted were sent to one of the most advanced forensic labs in the world, in the UK. The McCanns' defense would later try to discredit the results, but the initial facts are clear. A sample taken from the car's trunk produced a partial DNA result. In an initial communication, the lab stated that the sample contained 15 of Madeleine's 19 DNA markers. Although the complexity of the sample made it legally inconclusive for a court of law, the message to investigators was a thunderclap. The probability of it being someone else's DNA was astronomically low. Let's add up the facts. A crime scene that makes no sense, testimonies that contradict each other, and now science. Dogs that find the scent of death in the apartment. The same dogs that find the scent of death and blood in the trunk of a car rented weeks later. And in that same trunk, a significant match to the missing child's DNA. The abduction story cannot explain any of this. It becomes a fantasy. Science was screaming that a tragedy happened within those four walls, a truth that cannot be denied by press officers or lawyers. This leads us to an obvious question. If the kidnapping story is a sham, what was the British government so desperate to hide by spending £13 million? The answer to that question isn't in Portugal. It's in London. To understand why the British government would invest a fortune and its political capital to control the narrative of a single missing child, we need to explore the darkest and most disturbing theory of all. The theory that Madeleine McCann's disappearance was not an accident or a common kidnapping, but an event planned to silence a threat to the British establishment. Forget the image of the McCanns as simple doctors on holiday. In this theory, they are pieces in a much larger game. The speculation, which circulates in circles of ex-intelligence agents and investigative journalists, posits that one of the members of the Tapas 7, or even one of the McCanns, had connections to the British intelligence services MI5 or MI6. Portugal, especially the Algarve, was known at the time as a meeting and transit point for operatives from various agencies, as well as a place frequented by powerful and controversial figures. The night of May 3rd, according to this theory, was not about a dinner with friends. It was about an operation that went horribly wrong, perhaps an information exchange, a surveillance operation, or a secret meeting. In that scenario, Madeleine was not a random victim. She became an inconvenient witness, or worse, leverage used by one party against another. Her disappearance was not the crime itself, but the consequence of a much larger crime happening behind the scenes. When the disappearance occurred, the British government was faced with a national security nightmare. Not the loss of a child, but the exposure of a secret operation on foreign soil, possibly involving high-ranking figures. The priority instantly shifted from find the child to contain the information. The intervention of Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, the millions funneled into Operation Grange, all of this, in this theory, were not acts of compassion. They were the costs of a massive cleanup operation. Operation Grange wouldn't be an investigation to find Madeleine, but an operation to take control of the investigation from the Portuguese, who, with their sniffer dogs and their suspicion, were getting dangerously close to the truth. Not the truth about a child's death, but the truth about a failed intelligence operation. The goal would be to ensure the official investigation focused exclusively on the kidnapping theory, the only narrative that shifted the focus away from the parents and their friends and, by extension, from any connection to the government. In this dark chess game, the McCanns would be neither grieving parents nor cold-blooded murderers. They would be compromised agents or assets, forced to play the role of a lifetime. The price of their silence wouldn't be paid in cash, but in protection. Protection from the Portuguese justice system, protection from the press, and a state-funded search that seemed endless because its real purpose was never to find anything. Its purpose was to look like it was searching. So far, does this reconstruction of events seem more plausible than the story of a phantom kidnapper? Does the psychology of fear and self-preservation better explain their actions than the pain of grief? Leave your verdict in the comments. Your agreement is the green light our operation needs to use our most powerful proof, because the evidence I'm about to show you now is not a theory. It's the proof that seals this case. The definitive proof of a tacit agreement is not a signed document, but a pattern of behavior that defies all logic, unless it's viewed through the lens of a conspiracy. The smoking gun is the financial report of Operation Grange itself. Year after year, the British government continued to approve millions of pounds for an investigation that officially produced not a single viable suspect for nearly a decade. Think about this like an investor. Would you continue to pour millions into a company that hasn't generated results in 10 years? Of course not. Unless the company isn't what it seems. Unless its product isn't profit, but something else. The product of Operation Grange wasn't solving the case. It was keeping it in a state of suspended animation, open enough to justify the funding and maintain the appearance of a search, but controlled enough to never get close to dangerous truths. The continuous funding was the payment for the contract. It was the government's message to the McCanns and anyone else who knew the truth: stay silent, and the state machine will continue to protect you, to keep the kidnapping story alive, and to push away anyone who gets too close. Each new year of funding was a renewal of the pact. This theory, as shocking as it is the only one that explains the question we started with. Why £13 million? It wasn't to find Madeleine McCann. It was to ensure that the truth about why she really disappeared would never be found. With the proof on the table, the question changes. It's no longer what happened to Madeleine, but who helped hide the truth. The answer involves a conspiracy much larger than just a panicked couple. It involves the power of an entire state. The existence of a silent contract between the McCanns and the British government explains why the official investigation took such a bizarre turn. The system didn't fail. It worked perfectly to achieve its true objective: information control. As soon as the Portuguese police, led by Gonçalo Amaral, began to follow the forensic evidence, the sniffer dogs, the inconsistencies, the DNA, and named the McCanns as formal suspects, the British state machine was activated. The consequence of suspicion falling on a British doctor couple was overwhelming diplomatic pressure on Portugal. The British Prime Minister at the time, Gordon Brown, and his ambassador in Lisbon became personally involved. The narrative in the media, especially the British media, changed overnight. The Portuguese police, once seen as partners, were systematically demonized, portrayed as incompetent and cruel for daring to investigate an upper-middle-class British couple. Because of the sniffer dogs' findings, the consequence was a campaign of scientific discrediting. Experts hired by the McCanns' defense appeared on every TV channel, ridiculing the evidence, calling the dogs unreliable. Because of the DNA result pointing to Madeleine in the car trunk, the consequence was the British Forensic Lab backtracking on its own findings, issuing a final report that classified the sample as inconclusive, a legal technicality that ignored the overwhelming probability. The system was turning against itself. The final consequence was inevitable. In 2008, less than a year after naming the McCanns as suspects, Portugal's Attorney General's office, crushed by political pressure, archived the case. Kate and Gerry McCann were cleared. The message was crystal clear. The truth about what happened to Madeleine McCann was too inconvenient. The price of a cover-up of this magnitude is never paid by those who commit it. It's paid by those who dare to challenge it. And the biggest collateral victim of this conspiracy of silence has a name: Gonçalo Amaral. He was the chief inspector of the Portuguese Judiciary Police, the man in charge of the initial investigation. He was the first to suspect the McCann's story, the first to see the cracks in the narrative. It was he who followed the trail of evidence, who requested the sniffer dogs, who built the case against the parents. He was doing his job. But for daring to do his job, he was crushed. Amaral was abruptly and controversially removed from the case. He retired from the police force and wrote a book, Maddie, The Truth of the Lie, where he detailed his theory and the evidence that supported it. The reaction was immediate. The McCanns sued him for libel, starting a legal battle that would last more than a decade. They didn't just want to silence him, they wanted to destroy him financially and professionally. Amaral's book was banned in Portugal for years. He was ordered to pay €1 million in damages to the McCanns, a decision that nearly bankrupted him. Although higher courts later overturned that ruling, the message was sent to any other police officer, journalist or witness who dared to question the official version: tell the truth and you will pay the price. The story of Gonçalo Amaral is the story of how the system protects its own, even if it means devouring its own servants. He became the scapegoat, the man punished for being right. His career was destroyed not by incompetence, but by his refusal to participate in the charade. He is the human face of injustice in this case. It's infuriating, it's frustrating, and that is exactly why Operation Black Box exists. If you also refuse to accept the silence and believe the truth needs to be leaked, then this is your call to action. Officially join the operation, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Every subscription is a new agent enlisting, making our movement stronger and proving that we will not stop until the black box is opened. In the end, The official verdict is an insult to intelligence and to justice. The Madeleine McCann case remains officially open but unsolved. Operation Grange, with its £13 million, never got close to an answer. Why? Because if our theory is correct, it was never designed to. It was designed to control, to manage, to bury. The McCanns and the Tapas 7 went on with their lives, protected by a shield of influence and money. The truth, supported by forensic evidence and logic, was sacrificed on the altar of political convenience and national security. The absence of a body allowed for legal reasonable doubt, but there is no moral doubt. The evidence, when viewed together, tells a clear, consistent, and terrifying story. Justice didn't fail for a lack of clues, it failed for a lack of will. The system won. Justice was buried. But in the midst of all this darkness, one final question remains, the most personal of all. What does this terrible story teach us about our own world? And what do we do with this inconvenient truth? The inconvenient truth this story teaches us is that sometimes justice isn't blind, it's selective. My final conviction, after analyzing every failure and every decision, is that the mystery of Madeleine McCann persists not due to a lack of clues, but by a deliberate choice. What haunts me is not the complexity of the crime, but the simplicity of the institutional negligence. The truth wasn't lost in a complex conspiracy, it was filed away in a folder, a victim of bureaucracy, prejudice, and convenience. And that is the most infuriating truth of all. And now, after we've gone through all of this together, I need to know what this story has awakened in you. Use the comment section below, not to judge, but to bear witness. Witness your frustration, your outrage. Leave a word, a sentence, that shows we have not forgotten and we do not accept the silence the system has imposed. I will read every single comment, because in a world that wants us to be quiet, our collective voice is the only weapon we have. And for those who want to go beyond bearing witness and want to help fund the next phase of Operation Black Box, there are two ways to do it right now. First, you can use the Super Chat to invest directly in our next intelligence acquisition. Every contribution, of any amount, helps us obtain the next confidential document or pay for the next forensic analysis. It's your way of funding the ammunition we will use to break the next lock. Second, for those who want a seat at the strategy table, you can become a channel member. Members are our elite operators. They not only ensure the continuous funding of the operation, but they get access to our war room. They see the documents before anyone else, vote on the next targets, and discuss strategies in a closed group. Super Chat funds the next move. Becoming a member helps draw the game map. The choice is yours, and it is thanks to the support of our operators that the next phase of Operation Black Box is already underway. In our next video, we will expose the contradictions in the statements of the couple's friends, breaking another lock that protects the truth. To continue in this operation with us, subscribe and turn on notifications. The search for the black box cannot stop. Until next time, remember, we are not going to ask for the truth, we are going to leak the truth.